Three, two, one.
We'd like to welcome you to another edition of Grok Talk, brought to you by New Hampshire's leading conservative blog site, GraniteGrok.com. We are your feared extremist, right-wing, hard-charging, gun-toting, opinionated, outspoken, rabble-rousing, letter-writing, radio microphone stomping conservatives and rational libertarians. So get ready for more news and opinion you could only get from GraniteGrok.com.
Grok Talk.
Welcome to Grok Talk. A beautiful Memorial Day weekend. Happy to have you with us. Remind you that we are here courtesy of our good friends at the Coalition of New Hampshire Taxpayers who allow us to use the space if we just pay for the phone. And that's always a nice thing to do. Be sure to check us out on Facebook and Twitter. Just look up Granite Grok, and you can listen to this in past programs on Stitcher, iTunes, TuneIn, Spreaker, Ustream, and other places. Everywhere. And the reason we are in all those places, and it's very important, because we have guests like the next gentleman who comes to us from the Club for Growth. He's the communications director for the Club for Growth, and I would like to welcome Doug Sachletben to the program. Doug, good morning.
Good morning, Steve. Thanks for having me on.
Great to have you on. Well, you know, I'm going to let my good friend Mike Rogers here lead this interview because he's a huge fan of the Club for Growth.
Oh, that sounds good. Thanks.
I am indeed, and I get your emails, and I cross-post some of your articles and scoreboards onto Granite Grok when there's an exciting race going on. I was really happy when the club jumped in for Marilinda Garcia, and sad that she didn't make it over the threshold. But I'm also not a fan of the huckster. And I had also looked into his tax and regulatory record when he ran last time. So I'd love to be the beneficiary of some real research on the topic. And over to you.
Well, and that's, you pointed to it, the taxes, the spending, the regulation. I mean, there's a lot of folks that, as we interact, who find Mike Huckabee to be a likable guy. Obviously, you know, he had the Fox Forum, he had Radio Talk, so he's a guy who's had some significant outreach, and certainly as a presidential candidate, you know, for the Republican side, trying back in '08. So there's a lot of people who have an affinity to Mike Huckabee as being a likable social conservative. We focus, as you know, on Club for Growth on economic issues. We're looking at taxes, spending, regulation, how these folks see government's role in the free markets and how much they allow for interference of the government's role. And so we're looking back at his record as governor, a little over 10 years, and saying, okay, how did he do on those issues? And as you know, that's where you run into problems. I mean, the taxes were a major issue. He came in and immediately made a significant tax cut as one of his first things in office, but from there on out, it was one tax increase after another. It seemed to be kind of the go-to solution for him whenever there was a spending issue. And instead of cutting, they raised taxes, so much so that, as we've said in some of our ads that we put out in Iowa and South Carolina early on, that it was $500 million net tax increase by the time his term in office was done.
Wow. And that's not that large or rich a state. That's pretty incredible. And was that straight out taxes, Doug, or was that fees?
Taxes and fees. And it was taxes that just went, sales tax, the nursing home bed fee that was essentially a tax. The gas tax was one that he will talk about quite a bit, because he will tell you that 80% of the voters in Arkansas approved this gas fuel tax, gas and diesel tax, when in reality it was he and the legislature in the spring of that year that actually pushed this issue. I believe it was 1999 who brought that tax, passed it, put it into effect, and began taxing people. And then it came back a couple of months later with the bond issue that, you know, the taxes would be used to repay bonds for highway repair. And so at that point, if you're a voter in Arkansas and you're already being taxed, a major tax on fuels for the purpose of roads, obviously you're going to support the bond sale to get that project started. That's going to be paid off with your tax dollars. So it's disingenuous at best to say 80% of the people of Arkansas supported this gas tax. It was pushed on them. And they said, well, okay, might as well go ahead and fix the roads now that you've done it.
Sounds like the
But it's
Republicans.
that kind of stuff.
Yeah, sounds like the Republicans in our Senate thinking that raising a gas tax was a good idea, when nobody ever took any care where the money in the account was spent.
Doug,
Exactly.
This is Ed Nail from the Coalition of New Hampshire Taxpayers. I interviewed Mike Huckabee when he was here when he ran the last time, and in his defense on one aspect of the taxes, the Clintons were there for many years, and then there was a governor that was tossed out of office immediately after that, and Mike Huckabee kind of stumbled into the governorship, if I remember correctly. But the whole that period of time, it was very popular, as it was in our state, to sue for education reform, for spending, basically, to say the Supreme Court would declare the way you raised money for education was illegal, and you had to get it through a different form of taxation. And here in New Hampshire, property tax is what we use. No one sued Arkansas until he became governor. So the Democrats got away with not being sued. He got whacked as soon as he became governor and put up a referendum to pay for the, let's say, court-mandated spending. What do you know about that?
When that came up, when the Supreme Court there, the state Supreme Court ruled that, he came back then in the spring, and I'm thinking we're at 2002 at this point, and that's one of the places there's an advertisement that we ran years ago. A lot of people will find on the internet just his YouTube comments in giving a address to the state legislature and saying, give me a sales tax or give me a gas tax or give me a cigarette tax. I'll sign it. Whatever it is, we'll do it. And most folks quickly attribute that, as the governor tries to say, to they were required, by the state Supreme Court. The state Supreme Court did say that there had to be more spending and more proportionate spending in different areas. It didn't require a tax, and also when he's meeting with the legislature at that point, the state is facing a deficit, a significant deficit. The education issue he pushed off till the fall of that year, so he was really at that point focused on, we just have to balance our budget, and whatever tax it takes to balance it, we'll do that. And then they came back to the education issue in the fall. Our argument on either of those, whether the budget deficit or the education, would be that the go-to shouldn't automatically be raising taxes. The go-to should be, how do we cut state spending? Where do we look to try to trim waste before we immediately progress to this? I mean, the other side of it is that the spending grew significantly. It's a national, we quote in our white paper, National Association of State Budget Officers, and they're just doing impartial ratings of all the states. And they say over his 10 years, general fund spending went up 52%, total spending by 101%, population and inflation was only 36%. So you've got a significant rise, 20% growth in state workers during that time. So it's hard to justify saying, okay, we face a problem. Granted, we have to solve it, but do we automatically go to taxes, or do we look to bring down the size of government?
Yeah,
he did both.
His argument is, I brought a referendum to the people, and they're the ones that voted it in. And you got to imagine that after the Clintons had been there for a while, there must have been some waste somewhere you could find. But I did get a kick out of the school that brought the suit. I forget the name of it, the Little Red Schoolhouse that brought the suit. He consolidated some of the schools, and that was one of the first ones to go. So I did get a kick out of that the school that brought the suit no longer exists to sue again. So I look at him as he's a minister first and a politician second. And he has a weak spot for, quote-unquote, helping people, and the best way to do the easiest way and to stay popular is to raise taxes. So that's the way I look at him as a candidate. So I don't think people should be shocked.
And that's exactly the wrong kind of minister, the one that believes in other people's charity instead of their own.
That's a great observation. I actually, my background prior to working in Washington the last 8 years or so was as a pastor, as a minister. And it's been interesting. I've worked in Washington as media, as on the Hill as staffer for congressional folks, and now at the Club for Growth. And you see people who come to Washington who are elected and come here with either one of two mentalities. They come and they know there's all these problems out in the country, unemployment and whether, health care a few years ago, the health insurance issue, all these different problems. And they either come and they look at the mess that's inside the Beltway and they say, okay, this place isn't going to solve it. We need to devolve power back to the states, to the local folks who understand the problems and the solutions. Or they look and go, wow, we've got all this tax money. We can just spend and spend. We can fix everything from here. And so I think you're exactly right. As you come in as a governor like Huckabee, you look at problems and go, well, I can fix them now, just simply by spending money. And we know that doesn't work.
I like to put it this way. Here in New Hampshire, we have 235 towns, and most towns have 3 selectmen, which are like little governors, township supervisors, whatever. And we have a House representative with 400 people in it and 25 senators. When I look at 24 senators, when I look at that, I say, wow, from my history of reviewing their behavior after they get elected, there's 2 types of people, the conservatives and the liberals or the progressives. And the one, when they get elected, they go, show me the books. And the other one says, show me the plans. It's the basic concept. I want to have my hands on the books so I can see what we're spending. And the other ones I want to have my hands on some plans so I can cut a ribbon and put one shovel in the ground. So there's that huge spread, and they seem to go either way. And the other one is gambling. As soon as you have gambling, they're either in their pocket or you're totally opposed to it. There's hardly any middle ground gambling. But that's what I've noticed with elected officials. And I'd love to know where the room is where they remove their spine. There has to be some sort of a medical area where they seize the bottom. They either pull it out from down low or they pull it out from up high without leaving a scar. But I know that they're pulling their spine out somewhere. I keep looking in the dumpsters for the loads of spines after they get elected.
I don't know where it is for your selectmen, but I know down here it's shortly after they get in office and the committee assignments start coming, and the prospect of someday working your way up to a chair of a subcommittee and those sorts of things, and leadership down here. The speaker and his folks say, if you want to progress, you'll have to play ball, and that's where the spine tends to go in the dumpster, as you would say.
Sure, and we see that in New Hampshire as well. We have currently a Democrat-owned and operated Republican Speaker of the House, and he uses committee assignments and the withdrawal thereof to bully and buy the pliable members of the Republican caucus. And about 3/4 of the Republicans, and they would otherwise be a majority, have spines. But there were enough without spines that this guy was able to stack all the committees, and essentially the Democrats' will shall be done.
Yeah.
But the voters in his town have spines, so he's up for re-election. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, hopefully.
All right, so back to Governor Huckabee.
Yes,
where did we leave off with him? I forget.
His highway spending,
that's
that
right.
was to improve southeastern Arkansas, if I remember correctly, right? To put some roads down in there. How'd that pan out? Because a lot of these things, we've been around long enough to see if there's results.
Well, and I think that there is market improvement. I think if you talk to folks from the Truckers Association, the highway transportation folks, who sort of score these things for states, will indicate that there was improvement in Arkansas, and certainly in education, probably the same thing. The question comes down to, and I think a lot of our small business owners, the folks who are listening to your show, and you all, you understand that there's a constant balancing act of making choices. There's a lot of things that I would like for my business, that I would love to have for my business, that I think would improve business and help, but I know I don't have unlimited spending, and so that's where I have to make the choice of what I'm going to reduce on the other side in order to get that new advertising plan or whatever it might be. And I think, again, that would be our argument, is that you can point to these improved highways, but was the gas and fuel tax that was imposed on the working folks of Arkansas the right way to do that, or was there another way, to even a mix of some kind of spending cuts, to make that happen and to make that more effective?
Well, I'll tell you what, up here in New Hampshire, we love the Club for Growth. And how do we get in touch with you guys?
The best is our website, clubforgrowth.org, clubforgrowth.org. And one of the things they'll find on there is, if you look under, in fact, it's on the front page, is our white paper series. And that's where the information on Governor Huckabee, we've got a lengthy white paper. And it's not meant to be just sort of light talking points. It's not the idea of just throwing out criticisms. What we've done is looked at all of the facts, and here's what he did in office, and we point out the tax cut that he started with, and then go through the tax increases. We point out the good comments he's made since leaving office, reference to Obamacare and spending in the federal government, and we try to give people a balanced perspective full of data and footnotes that they can read and say, okay, this is where it seems to be. And so they can see the white papers. We've done them on all the all I shouldn't say, because a couple more have come in just in the last few weeks, but on the announced candidates, and we're working on them for the rest, and we'll continue to put out these white papers. And as you guys know from the Club for Growth, there's scorecards on your members of Congress and how they vote on economic issues, and just key vote alerts. Right now, trade is the big issue, and so our latest information on where we are in terms of the trade debate, all that's at clubforgrowth.org.
All right, Doug, if you want to hang on for a couple seconds, we can come back and we can run down that bullet list on Huckabee. If you want to just hold on, we're going to take a break. We will be right back.
Yep.
It's the Coalition of New Hampshire Taxpayers. We're located at 8 North Main in Concord, New Hampshire. This is the repository for all things conservative and municipal. So if you have a problem in your town, your school, your budget committee, the right to know law, and now at the top of our list is voter fraud. You have a tip for us, some information for us, you want to join or help us out, cnht.org.